Now,
All right, the Wedgle was created in the first place. Wedgle is 3/4 inch needle. We measure the distance from the tip of the needle to the base of the hub. That's what we call it, 3/4 inch. So it has no check valve in it. It has one hole in it. It's used with the wedge check, and that's what we use. Then in California, they started having problems with eucalyptus trees, which is a Australian import, by the way. But it's a thicker bark tree, and the Wedgle wasn't getting through to the xylem phloem of the tree. So we created an 1.5 inch Wedgle. From here to here is an 1.5 inch. It goes all the way through. We still use it with the wedge check, but after you go through an 1.5 inch of bark, you usually don't need the wedge check as much. And that was basically the end of our creation of new needles for a long time. Then we started having problems with pine wilt, which affects Scots pines. And the problem is that the wedge check and the Wedgle and whatever don't do well on a conifer. The disadvantage is the wedge check won't hold, and it's just a pain. But the good thing is that a conifer has a totally different vascular system. So if you put a product into a pine 1/2 inch in, inch in, it'll still move, or 1.5 inch in, it'll move. But you got to get it past the rosin ducts, which nobody else has gotten through. Everybody else tries to do it. They drill a hole in the tree, they pull it out, the drill has rosin all over it, and there's up a creek. So we created a portal, and the portal is a 3/4 inch portal. That's what this is. The reason we call it portal is because it's got 6 holes drilled into it. We used to have them laser, but now these are superior because they're drilled holes, and it has a check valve at the back. So we created a 3/4 inch portal that allows us to do conifers, and then we knew we needed a longer one than that for pine trees, because as you start to getting above, I would say 6 inches, 7 inches in diameter, you need a longer needle to get through the thicker bark. So we have the 1.5 inch portal that we created. So we have an 1.5 inch portal, we have the 3/4 inch portal, and that was it. Then I was running into some trouble with what I found was when I injected a oak tree with a 3/4 inch Wedgle, I put the gun through, pulled the handle back. Everything was great on the oak tree, but the moment I pulled the needle out of the wedge check, the pressure was high enough in the tree that it came right out the center of the wedge check. So what I needed was a hybrid. I call it a hybrid. So the Wedgle Plus, this is an 1.5 inch Wedgle Plus. I don't see the 3/4 inch Wedgle Plus, but the Wedgle Plus basically is a one-hole needle, only one hole. It uses the wedge check, but it's got a check valve on the rear. So what you do is you put it into the oak tree, pull the handles back slowly, release it, and disconnect it, and leave the Wedgle Plus in the tree, move over 4 inches and make the next injection. But at the same time, I started that was what I did on oak trees, okay? We started out with a 3/4 inch portal, and then one of Banner's great customers, Wayne White, called me up one day and said, "Hey, I've tried the 3/4 inch in elm trees. Do you have a longer needle? I think this would work." I said, "Well, I don't think it'll work." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I didn't think of it." So that's how I can handle innovation. Anyway, so I made some special needles or 1 inch portals, and he liked them, and so that's what we wound up doing on those trees. So we have all these things. The newest thing is, one client came to us a year ago, it was a year ago or 2 years ago, and said, "When I inject using the wedge check, sometimes the wedge check comes out of the tree. And I have a problem with that because on things like linden, which are really soft trees, the wedge check comes out, and I wish you have something that holds the wedge check in the tree while we're injecting it, and then we pull it out." So we put a spring on the end of that, and we put the spring on the end of it, and what that does is it holds the wedge check in the tree, and it compresses the wedge check against the sides of the bark that you put in there, and you make the injection, and you release it, and you come out, and the wedge check still stays in that compressed area, and so nothing comes out of the tree. It works great. So then I went back and tried it on oak trees, and actually it was the first time, even with the Wedgle Plus, it was better than the Wedgle Plus, and I see no reason to sell the Wedgle Plus anymore, but we still have it in our inventory. Because I think the SP needle, SP stands for spring, obviously, technically this is still counted as a 3/4 inch wedge because when you compress the spring down here, that's a 1/4 inch added to this, so it's still a 3/4 inch needle. And then we have a palm needle, which I don't think we show in this one here, which is a 3-inch one. And then we have a 8-inch needle that we use on Canary Island palms specifically for Spain and southern France, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the whole progression of needles.
So what about with a crepe myrtle? What do you recommend?
Okay, back to a crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtle is very thin bark, exfoliating bark, very thin. I would recommend that you use the 1/2-inch portal like we use on sycamores, by the way. And what you do is you go down to the base of the tree. So if you take a look at my hand here, assuming that this is like the base of a tree, stand up here like this, sorry. So this is a tree, this is a crepe myrtle. And you have these buttress joints that go out here a little bit like that. If you were to inject here, like in my finger, you'd hit bone in about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch. But if you put it through here, that wouldn't be a problem. So it's the same thing on the crepe myrtle. If you inject in between in the valleys, you will get chemical to stay in the tree. And the crepe myrtle is so small, it's no bigger than right here. It's never more than 3 inches in diameter.
There's no included bark there.
That's right. No, we don't. Yeah, we don't have that as a problem. So I inject here and one on the other side, and you should be open free.
So it's conductive, just like you do that with a magnolia tree the same way too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Chip. We appreciate you coming by to tell us this story.
Now you know everything.